When my son told me I would not be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from joy, but the kind that hides a storm. I rose from their couch, adjusted my coat, and stepped into the night. The bitter December air stung my lungs as I pulled my phone from my pocket. One call, that's all it took. And by the new year, their mortgage payments were cancelled. Just like that. Their perfect little kingdom of silk curtains and hardwood floors stood on sand, and I was the tide. But that was only the beginning. Justice, I told myself, must be restored. Arrogance must be punished. And my plan was only just beginning. It hadn't started with fury. It had started with love. I was sitting in Michael's living room, sinking deeper into the leather couch I had helped him choose, back when he still valued my opinion. I could make my famous turkey this year, I said softly, almost casually. The one with the sage stuffing your mother used to love. Remember how she used to say it was better than her grandmother's? The words carried weight, drifting into the air like smoke, mingling with the scent of Isabella's expensive vanilla candles. For a moment there was silence. Then Michael shifted. His posture betrayed him, shoulders tightening, pulling inward, as though he was bracing for a blow. "Dad," he said at last, his voice unsteady, "unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas." The words struck me harder than any fist could. My heart jolted, my breath stalled. I blinked once, twice, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Why wouldn't I be welcome?" Michael didn't look at me. His gaze dropped to the polished marble coffee table, the one I had helped him pick out last spring, when Isabella decided their old furniture wasn't sophisticated enough. "Isabella's parents are coming," he murmured, "and they'd prefer if you weren't here. They'd prefer." The words curdled inside me. My hands went cold, my chest tight. "They'd prefer," I repeated slowly, tasting the poison in the phrase. "And what way is that, Michael?" He flinched, his voice shrinking into itself. "It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about traditions. They have their own way of doing things." My eyes scanned the room. Every surface screamed of my sacrifices. The silk curtains I'd paid for when Isabella complained of privacy. The hardwood floors, bought with the second mortgage I took out. The crown molding, charged to a credit card I could barely afford. Every inch of this house was built with my fingerprints, my sweat, my love, and now I was a stranger here. Through the archway, I caught sight of the new KitchenAid mixer, Isabella's prized possession from her holiday baking phase, a phase that lasted all of 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money, gleaming on the counter, used maybe twice. That mixer had more of a place in this house than I did. Where will I spend Christmas then? The question slipped out, quieter than I meant, almost like a plea. Michael's face softened, but only slightly. "Maybe you could, I don't know, visit Aunt Rosa, or we could do something the weekend after." The weekend after, as if Christmas was a dentist appointment, as if the traditions I had bled for could be postponed to accommodate her family's comfort. I stood slowly, my knees protesting, my chest burning with years of swallowed disappointments. My son's voice cracked. "Dad, wait." But I was already moving, past the framed photographs, where my face grew smaller and smaller, fading into the background of their perfect smiles. Past the closet bursting with Isabella's coats, each one more expensive than the last. My hand found the doorknob, cold, unyielding. I paused. I didn't look back. "Son," I said, my voice low and steady, "tell Isabella's parents." I let the silence stretch, long enough for his breath to hitch. "Tell them this house." I tightened my grip on the door. "This house doesn't belong to them. And soon, it won't belong to you either." The air went still. Behind me I could hear Michael's sharp inhale, the sudden panic breaking through his practiced calm. But I didn't turn. I stepped into the night, the winter wind carrying away the last trace of warmth from their home. And as my footsteps crunched against the frozen driveway, One truth rang louder than the Christmas bells in the distance. They had just uninvited me from their future, and I had just declared war on their present. What came next, they would never see coming. Feliz Navidad. The December air struck my face like an open hand as I walked toward my truck, each step crunching against the frost-bitten driveway. Behind me, I heard Michael's voice, hesitant, strained, call my name just once, a single syllable, swallowed quickly by the night. Then came the soft final click of the door closing. That sound, more final than any courtroom gavel, more brutal than any goodbye. It wasn't just a door shutting. It was my son choosing his new family, his new traditions, his new life over me. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather groaning beneath my weight, the cabin already chilled to the bone. For a long moment, I sat there in silence, the engine off, watching the rows of Christmas lights twinkling from houses up and down the street. Homes filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of belonging I had been denied. I stared through the windshield at windows I would never be welcome behind again. My phone buzzed in my pocket, shattering the quiet. The screen lit up. Michael, no doubt ready to offer empty apologies wrapped in guilt, hollow words meant to soften the cruelty. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key. The truck coughed to life, the heater whining as it pushed back against the bitter December cold. I steered into the darkness, the glow of their house shrinking in my rearview mirror, disappearing like a memory erased. The streets of South Hills unfolded around me, familiar roads lined with shadows of who I used to be. Every corner held ghosts. The little league fields where I cheered for Michael until my voice broke, the old diner where Maria and I had laughed through cheap breakfasts, the places where I had once believed family was everything. Back then, I would have given my last dollar to see my son smile. And in the end, I did. That man, the one who believed in unconditional love, was gone. He'd been bled dry. A fool. I stopped at the red light on 29th and Grand. The glow bathed the cab in crimson as I glanced to my left. A young father was loading Christmas presents into the back of his SUV, his breath forming white clouds in the icy night. Inside the car, his children pressed their faces to the glass, wide-eyed with excitement, fogging the windows with eager laughter. For a moment my chest ached. That had been Michael and me once before Isabella. Before my role had been reduced to that of a walking wallet, a bank account with inconvenient emotions attached. The numbers started rolling through my mind, relentless as a broken slot machine. $2,800 a month. For 5 years. My calculator had given up long ago, but I hadn't. I knew the total. $140,000. More money than Maria and I had saved for our retirement. Gone. Vanished into their dream, their lifestyle, their entitlement. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator harder than necessary, the truck lurching forward with a growl that matched the storm in my chest. I passed 5th Street, where I'd refinanced my own house, our house, Maria's and mine, to cover their down payment. I remembered the pitying look from the loan officer, his words still sharp in my mind. "Mr. Flores, are you sure about this? You're putting a lot at risk for someone else's investment." Someone else's investment. Not my son's future, not my family's security, just someone else's investment. Lincoln Street, the bank where I'd taken out a second mortgage after Michael lost his job 2 years ago. Just temporary, Dad, just until I get back on my feet. I could still see him standing in front of me, voice trembling, with Isabella just behind him, arms crossed, a $700 purse hanging from her shoulder. She nodded sympathetically, her face the very mask of concern, while her eyes calculated exactly how much my desperation was worth. As it turned out, it was worth nothing. Nothing at all. I pulled into my driveway, the cracked concrete groaning under my tires. Repairs I couldn't afford stared back at me, reminders of where every dollar had gone. The porch light flickered above, weak and tired, like me. Inside, the house greeted me with silence. No Maria, no warmth, no laughter of family gatherings that used to echo through these walls. just emptiness. I fumbled with my keys at the door when my phone rang again, shrill and insistent, bouncing off the hollow walls. I pulled it from my pocket. Isabella's name flashed across the screen, bright and poisonous. Perfect. I almost laughed. 5 years of swallowing my pride, 5 years of playing the good father, the generous provider. And now, at last, the moment I'd been waiting for. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th I answered. "Dennis." Isabella's voice purred, dripping with practiced sweetness. The same tone she used when asking me to cover their water bill, their property taxes, their endless list of needs dressed up as emergencies. I leaned against the kitchen counter, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. "Go on," I said, my voice low, measured. "Tell me why I'm not good enough this time." "Feliz Navidad," Isabella said, her voice lilting, polished, rehearsed. I could hear the sound of shopping bags rustling faintly in the background, her world of boutiques and indulgence alive and thriving, fueled by the money siphoned from my veins. I leaned against the kitchen counter, still wearing my coat, the December chill clinging to me like a second skin. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with Michael," she continued smoothly. "Misunderstanding?" My voice was flat, controlled, though my pulse thundered beneath the surface. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding, Isabella. You made your position quite clear." There was a pause on the other end, the kind of silence that dripped with smugness. "Look, Dennis," she said finally. "I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." My grip tightened around the phone. "A certain atmosphere," I repeated slowly. "And what atmosphere is that, exactly?" Another pause, longer this time. "Then well, they're not used to your kind of cooking. All that spicy Mexican food, and the loud music. And frankly, Dennis," her voice dipped lower, sharper, "they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art, you know." The words slammed into me harder than any fist ever could. 8 years I had swallowed her little insults, endured her false politeness, pretended not to notice the way she looked at me, like I was some servant who had outstayed his welcome. But this was different. "My kind of cooking," I said evenly. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother. That was different," she snapped back, the sugar in her tone dissolving. "We were appreciative then. But now, with my parents, now with your parents," I cut in, my voice steady as a blade, "you can't have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your fancy dinner table." The mask dropped completely, her false sweetness evaporated, leaving only ice. "Don't be dramatic, Dennis. This isn't about race, it's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly would you contribute to dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile." Heat flooded my chest, but I held my voice steady, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father made in his best year." "Money isn't everything, Dennis," she said coldly. "Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly," her tone turned poisonous, "Maria understood her place better than you understand yours." The world went still. The line on the phone was silent, heavy, suffocating. She had crossed something sacred. A line I hadn't even known existed until she trampled over it in her designer heels. My hand trembled, not with weakness, but with rage, as I whispered, "What did you say about my wife?" "I'm just saying," Isabella continued casually, twisting the knife. She knew how to blend in better. She didn't make waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her. My knuckles turned white around the phone. "Maria," I said, my voice dark, dangerous, unrecognizable even to myself, "had more class in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever possess." "Oh, please." Isabella let out a short, cruel laugh. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to stay quiet about it. My breath slowed, deepened. The silence between us stretched until it became unbearable. Then my voice dropped lower than it had ever gone before. Isabella, I want you to listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just, she started. We're done, I repeated, cutting her off, and with deliberate finality, I ended the call. The kitchen around me felt different now. Smaller, yes, but lighter too, as if some suffocating weight had been stripped away. I set the phone down gently, carefully, my hands steady for the first time in years. I walked to my desk in the corner. The drawer creaked as I pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Inside, bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had bled me dry while they lived like royalty. The pages spilled across the table like evidence at a crime scene, every line item a reminder of my own gullibility. 5 years, $2,800 on the 15th of every month, vanishing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own destruction. I grabbed my calculator. My thumb jabbed at the buttons, tallying the wreckage. The first year, $33,600. The second year, another $33,600. By the third, I had stopped buying myself new clothes. By the fourth, I was shopping at discount grocery stores. By the fifth, I was surviving on peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. The screen blinked with the total $143,400, and that didn't include the down payment, or the times I covered their utilities when Isabella's shopping addiction spiraled out of control, or the new roof, the landscaping, the endless furniture upgrades she insisted were essential for their lifestyle. I sat back in my chair staring at the numbers until they blurred together. Maria's life insurance money, my retirement savings, the college fund we had started for grandchildren I would never be allowed to see, all of it, gone, poured into a house where I was no longer welcome to sit at the table. My hand reached for the phone again. My finger scrolled slowly, deliberately, until it hovered over one name in my contacts, my bank. This time I didn't hesitate. The automated voice greeted me first, polite and precise, offering options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful, how accommodating to people like me. My finger hovered for a second before I pressed the button. A small, bitter laugh almost escaped me. For years I had bent over backwards to accommodate everyone else. Michael, Isabella, her family. And here was a machine, more respectful than my own blood. Customer service. This is Jennifer. How can I help you today? The voice was warm, efficient, trained to sound like help. I straightened in my chair, my hand steady on the receiver. I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said. My voice carried a weight I hadn't felt in years, calm, resolute, final. Certainly, sir. I'll just need your account number and some verification information. The numbers rolled off my tongue, rehearsed by repetition, burned into memory from half a decade of servitude. I could hear her typing in the background, the quiet click of keys, professional, detached. No judgment, no questions about why a 62-year-old man was suddenly cutting ties to what she must have assumed was his son's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Flores, she said after a pause. $2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo, account ending in 7,423. How long have you been making this transfer? I hesitated for just a moment. The truth scraped like glass in my throat. 5 years. 5 years, said aloud. It sounded like a sentence handed down by a judge. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of silence. 5 years of building their dream while I lived in the shadow of my own. And you want to cancel it, effective immediately. I looked around my kitchen, at the outdated refrigerator with a handle that stuck, at the yellowing walls that had been begging for paint, at the draft slipping through the windows, frosting the edges of the glass, reminders of repairs that never came, all because I had spent every dime on someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I said. My voice did not shake. Done, Jennifer replied. The transfer has been cancelled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? For a second I almost laughed. The question was so ordinary. as if I hadn't just closed the book on 5 years of bleeding out. "No," I said softly. Then stronger. "No, that's everything." The line went dead, and the silence that followed was different. Thick, yes, but not heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was liberating. I sat there in my kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint whistle of wind against the eaves. Outside, December darkness had settled over Spokane, coating the streets in ice and shadow. Across the neighborhood, Christmas lights twinkled in warm windows, where families gathered around trees without judgment, without conditions, without the need to pretend they were something they weren't. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Maria died, I would breathe without the weight of their needs crushing my chest. I could fix the flickering porch light. I could buy groceries that weren't measured against the cost of Isabella's latest indulgence. Maybe I could even take a vacation, somewhere warm, somewhere far, somewhere Maria would have loved. I gathered the evidence, the bank statements, the mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic betrayal, and carried them to the fireplace. One by one I fed them to the flames. The fire bit quickly, greedy, curling the edges of paper into blackened scrolls, turning numbers and signatures into ash. A trail of smoke rose, carrying with it the ghosts of my guilt. The heat kissed my face, warmer than I had felt in years. Behind me my phone buzzed on the counter. Once, twice, a third time. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Probably Michael, fumbling with apologies rehearsed in Isabella's voice. Or Isabella herself, needing money for something essential, new throw pillows perhaps. Another coat, another debt to drape over my shoulders. I didn't check. I wouldn't check. Instead I reached into the cabinet above the sink, and pulled out a bottle, the good whiskey, the one I'd been saving for some special occasion that never came. Maria and I had bought it years ago, promising we'd open it on the night we finally retired free and clear. That night never came. But tonight felt different. Tonight was special enough. I poured a glass, the amber liquid catching the light of the fire. I raised it slowly, steady hand, steady heart. To Maria, I whispered into the quiet, and then I drank. By 5 p.m., the calls had gone silent. My phone sat on the counter like a useless relic, its screen black, its buzzing heart stilled. I made myself a plate of leftover roast chicken, sat down at the table, and ate slowly. Each bite tasted like freedom, seasoned with silence, garnished with peace. I didn't even rush the meal. Why would I? Somewhere across town, Isabella was pacing in her kitchen, her voice raised, her parents frowning at the inconvenience, the embarrassment. I could picture it, her perfect Christmas facade cracking in real time. I imagined her explaining why her ex-husband, her weak, spineless, unworthy ex-husband, wasn't there to chauffeur her parents across the city. That image alone made the chicken taste better than any restaurant meal she'd ever dragged me to. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting by the fireplace, sipping from a glass of scotch Maria had once given me for Father's Day, the bottle I'd never opened until tonight. The amber liquid glowed in the firelight. Outside, the street glittered with neighbors' holiday cheer, twinkling lights, wreaths, the faint sound of carols drifting through frosty air. Inside my house, a different kind of carol played, the music of my own stillness. No one shouting, no one demanding, no one reducing me to an errand boy. At 8:23, my phone lit up again. This time, not Isabella, Michael, my son. For a moment I considered answering, but then I thought about yesterday, about his silence when Isabella dismissed me like a servant, about how quickly he'd aligned himself with her cruelty. Blood or not, he had chosen sides. I let the call pass. If they wanted my presence, they could have defended my dignity when it mattered. The fire cracked. I raised my glass again, to the photo of Maria, to the quiet walls that had seen me at my lowest. "We're getting better," I whispered, one small act at a time. Somewhere across town, Isabella was unraveling, her parents disappointed, her husband frustrated, her Christmas dinner clouded by the absence of the one man she'd spent years dismissing. And for once I wasn't there to absorb her venom. By midnight, I slept better than I had in years. Then I did something I hadn't allowed myself in years. I turned my cell phone completely off. The sudden silence was intoxicating, absolute, a luxury I didn't know I missed. The house seemed to breathe with me, walls expanding into the quiet, the hum of the heater suddenly companionable. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a can of tomato soup, letting the familiar smells, bread crisping, cheese melting, soup steaming, fill the kitchen, comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months. Every grocery dollar had once vanished into their perfect little suburban castle, funding someone else's comfort, while mine went unfed. Tonight it was mine. The winter sun had already begun its slow descent, casting long sharp shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably standing in an airport parking garage, arguing over taxi fare, huffing and fuming at the audacity of being left stranded. I smiled to myself, the warmth from the oven, and the steam from the soup mingling, and the thought made the meal taste even better. By 5 p.m., I had eaten, loaded the dishwasher, and was considering what movie to watch. Years of evenings had been stolen by emergency calls, last-minute favors, and the silent expectation that I exist to serve their convenience. Tonight I was unhurried. I reached for the remote, anticipation curling like smoke around my fingertips. Then the pounding began, not a polite knock, not the gentle tap of civility. This was aggressive, full of raw fury, rattling the frame like a battering ram against a fortress. I set my tea down and walked toward the sound slowly, deliberately, already knowing who I would find. The pounding intensified. Each blow was a heartbeat of rage, a drumbeat heralding entitlement. Through the peephole, I could see them, 3 figures huddled on my porch, circling like predators. I opened the door. Cody Jenkins' red face was inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, pushing past me into my living room without permission. Catherine followed, her hair disheveled, her lips pressed into a thin line of pure hatred. "This is completely unacceptable behavior from someone your age, Dennis. Absolutely barbaric." Isabella brought up the rear, her designer coat wrinkled, her makeup smudged, voice shrill. "You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to get out of my house. I didn't move. I didn't flinch." My voice cut through their chorus of outrage like steel through silk. "Excuse me," I said, calm, precise. They froze, caught off guard by the edge in my tone. "You don't get to make demands here, buddy," Cody growled, turning red to purple. "Not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I said quietly, deliberately. "And I want you out now." Catherine stepped forward, oozing condescension perfected over decades. "Dennis, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections, business connections, social connections. You can't treat people like us this way and expect there won't be consequences." I met her gaze steadily. "A lesson, yes," I said, my voice cold and unwavering. "A lesson about your excessive arrogance and your poor treatment of people you consider beneath you." Isabella gasped. "A lesson? Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and taxi service," I replied, stepping aside to widen the door. "The lesson is over. You can leave." Cody jabbed a finger toward my chest, but didn't touch me. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very, very difficult." "Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins?" I asked, voice low, controlled. "It's a promise," he hissed, venomous. "You think abandoning elderly people at an airport is something you can do without consequences. You're about to learn exactly how wrong you are." Catherine nodded, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Indeed, actions have consequences, Dennis, and yours will be quite public." Isabella grabbed her father's arm. "Daddy, let's go. This pathetic old man isn't worth our time." They filed out like a defeated army, Cody turning back just once. "You'll regret this," he spat. "I guarantee it." I closed the door behind them and clicked the deadbolt into place. The satisfying click echoed in the quiet house. Through the window, I watched them pile into a rental car, still bickering as they drove into the December darkness. Their absence left the house cleaner, lighter, though their words, the threats, the warnings echoed faintly in the empty rooms. Public consequences, important people, connections. I walked back to my living room and picked up my tea, still warm. For the first time in this long, bitter saga, I felt something new, anticipation. 3 days later, morning coffee in hand, scanning the Spokane Review, I saw my own face staring back from page 3. The headline, Spokane businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm. My hands froze around the mug, black and white, a 5-year-old corporate photo I barely recognized. Below it, Cody and Catherine Jenkins had spun a story of helplessness and danger, casting me as a cruel, erratic villain who had suddenly snapped without provocation. No mention of Isabella's demands, no mention of the 5 years of financial exploitation, the mortgage transfers, the Christmas dinner rejection. Just me, alone, the villain. I read and reread the article. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor, had byline. I didn't know her, but I recognized the strategy: maximize damage, frame me as unhinged, and use connections to place the story exactly where it would sting most. Smart, very smart. For the first time I felt a grudging respect. They weren't merely spoiled brats, they were strategic, calculating. Reputation in Spokane mattered. One well-placed story could undo decades of hard work. I folded the newspaper carefully, slid it aside, and my mind shifted, methodical and sharp as the steel of my old tile-cutting tools. This wasn't about airport pickups anymore. Not Christmas dinner, not mortgages, not petty insults. This was war. I opened my laptop. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores. Social media profiles, connections, habits, weaknesses, all documented, all accessible, all fodder. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at my wall calendar. December 18th. 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to finish the game. 7 days to flen something they would never forget. I spent the next 3 living in a world far removed from the one where I was Dennis Flores, the broken man who let his family walk all over him. In this world, I was Dennis Flores, businessman, strategist, someone who had built a life from nothing and wasn't about to let entitled parasites destroy 40 years of work. My laptop became command central, tabs stacked like playing cards in a high-stakes game. Cody Jenkins, retired First National Bank manager, Spokane Country Club member, treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association, a man with influence, reputation, a carefully curated life. Catherine's Instagram scrolled endlessly with perfect living, charity luncheons, wine tastings, vacations in Coeur d'Alene, everything polished to show success, all built on someone else's money, my money. Isabella's Facebook, however, revealed the truth. Status updates flaunting the home I'd bought for them, dinners paid for by me, luxury outings, while I balanced peanut butter sandwiches on my lunch plate. Narcissism without bounds. But it was Michael's LinkedIn profile that gave me the final piece. A new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review, the same Patricia Morrison who'd written the hatchet job about me. A 5-minute dive into business directories confirmed my suspicion. Cody had reached out, leveraging 3 mutual connections to plant the story. Amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing, not a response, something far better, a timeline. 5 years of financial support, documented, bank statements, receipts, cancelled checks, down payment for the house, $47,000 from my home equity loan, kitchen renovation, $18,000 charged to my credit card, 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each, $168,000, plus renovations, utilities, furniture, more than $250,000. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize, probably Isabella trying a new angle. I ignored it. I had work to do. By evening, the evidence was organized in a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Receipts, bank statements, printed social media posts flaunting my money, the newspaper article with my handwritten margin notes exposing every lie. On the wall calendar, December 24th was circled, not for Christmas, but for justice. According to Isabella's Facebook events, they were hosting 12 people, members of their social circle, people who read the Spokane Review, people who deserved the truth. I dressed carefully in my navy blue suit, the one I had worn to Maria's funeral, pressed and ready for a different kind of farewell. Today I said goodbye to the man who had been a doormat. Tonight I became someone who commanded respect. 6:30 p.m., briefcase in hand, I drove to Kendall Yards. Their house glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway, figures moving inside. Isabella was playing hostess, radiant in the home my money had bought. I parked across the street, checked my watch. 6:45. Perfect. Late enough for everyone to be seated. Early enough that the main course was still on the table. No easy escape. The front door was unlocked, of course. Isabella prided herself on the neighborhood's security, oblivious to the consequences of negligence. I stepped inside. Warm air, laughter, conversation, the life I'd been denied, hit me like a tidal wave. Then Catherine's voice rang out, clipped, indulgent, "But darling, that's not how we do things in our family." Laughter followed. Our family, after everything. I stepped into the dining room, briefcase in hand. 12 heads turned, expressions shifting from surprise to horror. Isabella froze mid-sip of wine. Michael went pale. Cody and Catherine looked as if they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting the briefcase on the marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Isabella found her voice first. "Dennis, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I replied, flipping open the briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and the lifestyle you've been flaunting." A woman I didn't recognize, one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward. "What is he talking about?" "He's having an episode," Isabella snapped. "Michael, call someone." But I was already moving around the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, everything you see around you. Silence, only the rustle of paper, as 12 people examined the evidence. Faces changed as comprehension dawned. Shock, disbelief, shame. "This is," one man started, then stopped, staring at a statement. "Outrageous," a woman finished across from him. "Isabella, why didn't you tell us any of this?" Isabella's composure cracked. "It's more complicated than it looks. Dennis volunteered to help us. We never asked." "Actually," I interrupted, pulling out the newspaper article, "let's talk about what you did ask for, and what you told the media about me." The room seemed to drop 10 degrees in temperature. Eyes flicked from the statements to the article, recognizing my photo from the unflattering story just 3 days prior. "Now," I said, voice carrying through the stunned silence, "let's talk about the real manipulators in this family." Cody's face went from red to ashen. Catherine sat rigid, her wineglass forgotten. "Mr. Jenkins here," I continued, tapping the newspaper, "used his banking connections to plant this story. And Isabella, well, your little parade of social media extravagance tells the whole rest of the tale." The room was quiet, 12 pairs of eyes on the evidence, the deception, the betrayal. Tonight the unmasking was complete. Notice how I was portrayed, as unstable, dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather. A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. "Cody, what is this about?" "The weather," I said before Cody could answer, "was 52 degrees and sunny, and they weren't stranded tourists. They were Isabella's parents, coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from attending, because I wasn't good enough for their company." Catherine finally found her voice. "That's not, we never said." "You never said what, Catherine?" I interrupted, holding up my phone, screenshots ready from Isabella's social media posts. Posts proving exactly what they'd whispered behind my back, that my Mexican food, my working-class conversation, my presence, would embarrass them in front of their educated friends. The woman I'd identified earlier shifted uncomfortably. "Catherine, surely you didn't." "He's twisting everything," Cody blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. "This man has serious mental health issues, stress, aging, financial problems." I almost laughed. "Financial problems? Mr. Jenkins, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have." I turned to the table. "These people have taken $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They manipulated my son, banned me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation in the newspaper." Michael spoke for the first time, voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew," I said quietly, "and her parents orchestrated it. They painted me as a villain for refusing to be their personal ATM and chauffeur." The social dynamic in the room shifted like tectonic plates. I could see it in the guests' faces, the dawning realization that everything they had been told about tonight's hosts was a carefully constructed lie. "This is unconscionable," said an elderly woman in pearls, staring at the bank statements. "Cody, how could you let your daughter take advantage of this man, then attack him publicly when he stopped enabling it?" Cody's carefully maintained facade began to crumble. "You don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly," the woman interrupted. "This man has been supporting your family financially while you treated him like hired help. And when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his reputation." Catherine's voice came out strangled. "He abandoned us at the airport." I cut her off calmly. "After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents. After 5 years of paying your bills while you looked down on me for my ethnicity and education level." Silence. 12 people stared at Cody and Catherine, disgust and embarrassment painted across every face. Isabella made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Everyone, please. This is a family matter that's gotten out of hand." "No," I said firmly. "This stopped being a family matter when you went public. When you used the newspaper to attack my character, to treat my reputation as acceptable collateral damage for your pride. I want all of you here to know the truth, before you read about Dennis Flores in the paper again, because next time you will read about me, the real story." I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for." As I walked toward the door, I could hear the eruption beginning behind me. Voices raised in accusation, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade crumbling. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I'd ever heard. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, certified mail. Legal consequences pressed into the envelope. I signed for it, noting how the spring air smelled of new growth and possibility instead of the winter desperation that had marked those dark December days. Notice of default. 3 months of missed mortgage payments had caught up with Michael and Isabella like a tsunami, $8,400 in arrears. 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it as you would weather news from halfway across the country. Interesting, but not your problem anymore. My phone had been ringing for weeks. Isabella's number blocked after the first hysterical voicemail. Cody and Catherine's social standing evaporated like morning mist. Even Michael, whose calls I'd ignored out of a mixture of anger and curiosity, eventually swallowed his pride. 97 days later, he knocked on my door. Not the confident man who'd excluded me from Christmas dinner, but someone aged 10 years in 3 months. Dark circles under his eyes, suit wrinkled, desperation clinging like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I stepped aside, letting him see my house as if for the first time, the new furniture bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, fresh paint on walls untouched for 8 years, because I hadn't been subsidizing someone else's fantasy life. Nice place, he murmured. It's what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who don't, I replied, settling into my recliner. Coffee? I offered. He shook his head, perching on the edge of the couch, wary. Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am. Christmas dinner, the newspaper, the way Isabella, the way we treated you. Go on, I prompted. I didn't know about Cody planting that story. I swear I didn't. He ran his hands through his hair. Jesus, Dad, the things they said about you behind your back, about our family, about Mom's memory. My jaw tightened at the mention of Maria, but my voice remained calm. And exactly what did they say about your mother? That she knew her place better than you knew yours, that she understood boundaries. They couldn't meet your eyes, I noted. I should have defended you. I should have stood up years ago. Yes, I said simply. You should have. We sat in silence, 5 years of mistakes weighing the space between us. Outside, a neighbor mowed his lawn, normal sounds of a normal Thursday in a normal neighborhood, where sons didn't exclude fathers from Christmas dinner. The house is in foreclosure, Michael said finally. I know, we can't make the payments without. He stopped, realizing how it sounded. Without my help, I finished. Without the money I was sending while you let your wife's family treat me like garbage. Do you know how much I sent over 5 years? He nodded miserably. Isabella calculated it after Christmas. Mortgage, down payment, everything else, over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. I know the exact amount, because I finally did something I should have done years ago. I added it up. His face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, son. That money is gone. But more importantly, those years are gone. 5 years I could have spent building a relationship with you instead of funding your wife's fantasy life. I know that now. He looked up, maybe seeing hope. But maybe we could start over. Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments? The hope died in his eyes. We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Isabella's respect, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do. You'll figure it out, I said kindly. The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I spent Christmas alone, while you celebrated with people who thought I was beneath them. He started to cry quietly, like a man who'd run out of options. I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you forever. I watched him, my son raised with love, convinced by his wife's family that I wasn't good enough. Michael, I said finally, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. He wiped his eyes. Is there any chance, any way you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I said, meaning every word. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It doesn't mean pretending this never happened, or that I'm resuming payments for a lifestyle built on scraps of my attention. Then what does it mean? I stood walking to the mantel where Maria's photo sat next to a new picture, a symbol that the past was acknowledged, but the future would be mine to shape. Me with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner, the first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. It meant something. It meant that if anyone wanted a relationship with me, they'd have to build it from scratch, show respect instead of demanding it, make choices based on what's right, not what's convenient. I turned back to Michael, and it meant that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone tries to exclude me from family gatherings, you'll remember who actually acts like family. He nodded slowly, perhaps understanding for the first time that respect isn't something you take for granted. The house, he asked quietly, isn't my problem anymore. I sat back, feeling lighter than I had in years. You're a grown man, Michael. Figure it out like grown men do. Get a job that covers your bills. Sell the house. Stop living beyond your means and expecting others to subsidize your choices. He stood, shoulders straight for the first time since he arrived. You're right about all of it. I know. He walked to the door, then turned back. Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you. embarrassed and angry, but proud. "Good," I said. "Maybe there's hope for you yet." After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey and stepped onto my back porch. Spring was coming to Spokane. Trees were beginning to bud. The air carried warmth and promise. In 4 months I'd be 63. Maria had been gone 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who didn't appreciate sacrifice. Not anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. "Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Real family. People who actually wanted me there. Everything else, expensive theater." And I was done buying tickets to shows where I wasn't welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom. The future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click the box on the left.